Welcome back. Today we have another one of these D7s and I want to paint what I call a Twisted Gill pattern on it, so let's get started. I already have the bill taped off, I have a white base coat on it, and I have a couple drops of opaque yellow loaded into the airbrush. And all I want to do is paint the tail of this bait with the opaque yellow. Just about the back third of the bait. I'll give the airbrush just a real quick rinse. And I want to add a little bit of fluorescent pink into the brush. Again, just 2 or 3 drops. And I just want to paint about the center third of this bait with the transparent pink. You can make this as heavy or as light as you want, however dark you want your paint. Go ahead and overlap the yellow a little bit. I'll give the airbrush a real quick rinse again. And I want to add a little bit of fluorescent purple into the airbrush. And I want to paint everything that's still white with the fluorescent purple. Go ahead and overlap your pink just a little bit. Kind of let those two colors blend together. Okay, now I'll give this a good heat set, rinse the airbrush out really well, and I'll be back. I have the bait heat set really well. I've rinsed the airbrush out. Now I want to wrap it in this mesh. This is that piece of mesh that I found here a while back at the dollar store on a flower arrangement, if you remember that. And I know I keep repeating it, but make sure when you're wrapping this mesh on these to get it as tight as you can get it. The tighter the better. We don't want any paint to get underneath it. Just pull and clamp. Now that we have our mesh on, I want to add just a couple drops of the opaque yellow back into the airbrush. And I want to cover this whole bait with the opaque yellow. Let's give it a heat set and then give it another coat. I'll rinse the airbrush out just real quick. Now let's add a little bit of Wicked Gold into the airbrush. Let's coat the whole bait with Wicked Gold, but we want to go lighter on the belly. We want to let a little bit of that yellow still show. So I'm going to start at the top, work my way down. I'll give the airbrush a quick rinse. I'm going to give it a pretty good heat set and I'll be back. I have heat set the bait. I've rinsed the airbrush out and I've added just a little bit of pearlized copper into the airbrush. And now I just want to paint, start at the tops, down the spine, and fade down about halfway with this pearlized copper. Just kind of darken it up a little bit. I'm going to quit with that. I'm going to give it a heat set again, just real quick. Give the airbrush a quick rinse. And I'm going to add a little bit of transparent dark brown into the airbrush. Turn my pressure down. Now I want to use this comb to make some stripes on this bait. I'm going to start kind of behind the gill plates here. Like that. I'll give it a quick heat set and I'll turn it over. Do the same thing on the other side. And then I'll take a little of this transparent brown and I'll kind of darken up the spine. I'll give it a good heat set. I'm going to rinse the airbrush out real good and I'll be back. I've given the bait a good heat set. I've rinsed the airbrush out pretty well, and I've added some opaque sky blue into the airbrush. Now I want to paint the head and the gills with this opaque sky blue, kind of faded into the brown and the gold. Get underneath the throat here. Now I'll give it a good heat set and we'll come back and take the mask off. Let's see what we got here. Interesting pattern for sure. One thing about this mesh, you never really know what you're going to end up with. That's what makes it fun. So since it's a gill pattern, let's give it some gills. But first I'm going to rinse the airbrush out real good because I'm going to put some white on here. I have the airbrush rinsed out really well, and I've added a little bit of opaque white into the brush. And I have just a little hand cut stencil here that I want to use to paint a little bit of a gill plate on here. Line it up. About where I want it. Just a little bit of white. Quick heat set, and we'll turn it over. Do the same thing on the other side. Quick heat set again. I'll give the airbrush a quick rinse. I'm going to add a little opaque black into the brush. We'll line our stencil up again. Just a little bit off of the white. Quick heat set. And same thing on the other side. Give it a quick heat set. Now let's give it some gold eyes. And that's what I call a twisted gill. I'll give it a clear coat. I'll show you what it looks like when it's all done. Thanks for watching. If you learn anything at all from these videos, please subscribe. It helps a lot.